Hello and welcome Digital Marketer Lab members to Office Hours. This is a weekly live training webinar we host every Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Central. I'm your host. My name's Jenna Snavely. I'm a content manager in charge of production here at DM. We're also joined by our wonderful content coordinator, Maya Hughley. She'll be in the live chat making sure your questions are heard. If you're brand new to this, each week we cover a different specific marketing strategy with a new expert guest. This is recorded, and if you are a paying Lab Plus, or Lab Elite subscriber, it'll be inside your members dashboard under the Office Hours tab within 24 hours. But if you're here with us live, let's live a little. You have the added benefit of getting your questions answered by our guest. And this week, we're joined by the Ryan Deiss to talk about a totally new updated framework he calls the Growth Triad, and how you can use this framework to discover the next big growth lever you should pull for your business. How's it going, Ryan?
It is going great. Good to be back. I think this is the first Office Hours I've been on in at least a year. So
I know, it's been a while.
For producing really great content and getting folks on here who actually know what they're talking about. And we'll make an exception this week.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you get started.
Okay, well, I know that we put out a poll, that you put out a poll earlier, and I just wanted to find out really how many of you on this joining us on the webinar right now, on the training right now, have gone through some aspect of the customer value journey training, or maybe you at least know what it is, because that really is the flagship framework that really underlies everything that we teach and talk about here at Digital Marketer. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today, that's a component of it, but this is really an overarching, even broader framework beyond that. But it's helpful for me to know how many people are at least familiar with the customer value journey, and what were the results, Jenna? Just
yeah, we have.
I remember, but I don't quite remember.
Yeah, well, it's a number. We have 67% that said yes, they've gone through some sort of CVJ training, and 33% said no. So about 60-40, leaning a little bit more towards yes.
Okay, well, hopefully by the time we're done with this, I will at least inspire those of you who said no to maybe give it a look-see. But what I'm going to be talking about here is the Growth Triad framework, of which the idea of documenting a value journey is certainly one component of that. So I guess before I get to the framework itself, this really came out of really so many things that we develop here at Digital Marketer come out of just a limitation or a frustration that I experience in marketing and in running companies, and trying to grow like we all are, and yet coming up and hitting certain ceilings. And so that's where this was developed. It's not intended to invalidate anything that we taught before. It's really designed to just broaden and to maybe provide some additional context around that. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that. So when we think about the Growth Triad, I really asked myself, what are the three elements? What are three assets? Right? So we're not talking about at this point kind of the 30,000 foot airy fairy. Oh, you've got to have your your passion and mission and all this other stuff. I'm not saying that those things aren't important. I just wanted to ask, like, what are the three things that I absolutely have to have figured out from a practical, tactical perspective if I want this dang company to grow? Like, if we want this thing to grow, what are the things we absolutely positively must have figured out? And the first one is something that we've known for a very long time, and that's that you must have a documented customer journey. Okay, you must have a documented customer journey. Now, for us at Digital Marketer, the framework, the tool that we use for that is the customer value journey framework. I'll touch on that briefly and give you some additional resources for additional study, especially for those like 40-ish, 35-40% of you who have not gone through any of that. Hopefully, again, I'll encourage you to change that. But really, this is essential. If you want to grow, whether you're an entrepreneur, a founder, a marketer within an organization, really the first thing that you need to do is you absolutely positively must document the process from transforming a stranger into a friend, into a customer, into a raving fan, right? How that happens is really, really important. And understanding how that flow occurs is critical, because you can't optimize what you haven't documented. All right, and that's probably a writer downer. You cannot optimize what you have not documented. So having a documented customer journey, that's critical. We've known this for a while. We focus on it extensively at Digital Marketer. We'll talk about it more in just a little bit. The next piece is this idea of actionable metrics, right? And specifically knowing what metrics should you track on a week, in particular on a weekly basis. Now, a lot's been said about metrics and analytics and optimization. We have an entire certification on tracking and analytics that now the head of the general manager and head of digital marketer, Justin Rondo, put together. It's fantastic. But understanding which metrics you should be looking at, which are the vanity metrics that you should probably ignore, but then specifically, what do we track and when? Like that is really, really critical. And again, what's a tool or a framework that can tell us this is what we need to track? And also the key here is actionable. Actionable. Once I've tracked these metrics, what the heck do I do with them? Do I know that they're actionable? Got to have that figured out. And we've got a tool that accomplishes that. And then thirdly is this notion of tools and tactics. Okay, this idea that, okay, I've documented the journey. Okay, I'm tracking some stuff. But if you don't then have tools and tactics to improve the different stages, well, you're going to have a lot of information, but you're not really going to be able to implement that. So in thinking about these things, right, this is what businesses need to grow. If you want to grow, this is the growth triad. You got to have a documented journey. You have to have actionable metrics that you track and monitor on a weekly basis. And you have to have the tools and tactics to change, right? What got you here won't get you to the next level. So you got to always be updating your tools and tactics. And if I'm being honest, at Digital Marketer, we're really good at that yellow circle. Like we provide you with probably all the tools and tactics you could ever want and more. We've gotten better at emphasizing this idea of documenting your customer journey, although for 40% of you, maybe not as good as we could have been. And then really in terms of providing tools and suggestions in and around metrics, we have courses that teach you how to do it, but the tools and the frameworks around it, not as strong there. So we really wanted to build that in. But in thinking about these are 3 things that you need, what happens if you're missing some of them? So let's say, particularly what happens if you have a documented journey and actionable metrics, but you're lacking the tools and tactics? Well, that's when you're kind of stuck in the mud, right? So if you're the type of person who you enjoy documenting, so you went in there, you documented your customer journey, you've got Google Analytics set up and you're tracking everything that's going on, but really you're just kind of watching the lines go, down and to the right instead of the better way, right? They're going in that downward direction. You feel stuck in the mud, right? Why? Because you don't have the tools and tactics to change things. Now, in my experience, this is the problem that probably the least of us suffer from. Most of us, if we have anything, it's a metric, butt ton of tools and tactics. All right, what if we kind of have a slightly different experience and we have a documented journey and we have tools and tactics, but we don't have any actual metrics? Well, if that's where you are, then you're that bull in a china shop, right? You are the marketer who there's lots of activity, you know where you want to go, but you have no idea what's working. So you're just flailing around and you're trying everything. And this is when shiny object syndrome can really take over. Okay. So if you find yourself just flailing around and trying everything and some of it's working, but you don't really know why, usually that means you got a good sense of the customer journey or of your funnel, how that's structured. You got some really great tools and tactics, but you really aren't tracking enough stuff. Again, another thing that can happen a lot, but the most likely scenario that I have seen, right, the most common scenario in my experience are marketers who have the tools and tactics and they're doing at least some tracking, but they have not taken the time to document their customer journey. And when I see this, usually what I see is what we call the one-hit wonder. And you have experienced the one-hit wonder syndrome when you have gone out there and you've purchased a training and you tried it and you executed it and it worked, but then it either stopped working because maybe that tactic became less, impactful, or, it just began to degrade over time and you didn't have more stuff to go back and more tactics to go back and deploy. The reality is tactics work until they don't, right? And if you don't have a unified framework, for that predictable growth, then you're going to find that, you're stuck in this launch mode. You're stuck in this mode of I always have to try something new. So in our experience, if you have a documented journey, if you have actionable metrics, and if you have tools and tactics, then you have what every business wants, which is this idea of predictable growth, right? Growth is good. going out there and executing on something that you learned, whether it's from one of the execution plans in Digital Marketer or in office hours or one of our events, or heck, even from one of the other hundreds of people out there talking about marketing tactics. Executing a tactic, executing even a strategy, and achieving results, that is good. But there's nothing quite like having that predictable growth, that growth that you can expect to be predictable, perpetual, month after month, week after week. And these are the three things that are required to do that. So what I want to do is kind of jump in and talk about how do you make sure that you have all three of these things. All right, how do you make sure that you can kind of check these three boxes and say, yep, you know what, with regard to the Growth Triad framework, I'm good to go. So to do that, I first kind of want to take a look at the documented journey. I'm going to zip through this kind of quickly because we have so much great stuff about it inside of Digital Marketer Lab. And specifically, we have our framework, which we call the customer value journey. All right, now hopefully, as you look at this right now, you're at least thinking, okay, that kind of looks familiar, right? I feel like I've at least seen that before. The reality is you can't have predictable growth if you haven't first documented how strangers become prospects, prospects become customers, and customers become raving and ultimately referring fans, right? This is the process by which customers are generated from scratch. And if you don't document it, you can't optimize it. So this tool that we have here at Digital Marketer, it does that, right? It delivers what every company needs, a predictable flow of those customers from scratch. It also is great at aligning business objectives across departments. So now everybody within the company can agree, okay, this is how people become aware of us. This is how we run ads. This is what engagement looks like and who's responsible for it. This is when somebody becomes a subscriber. Yes, we can actually agree on the definition of a lead, right? But what it also does is it brings in the product team, the folks who are responsible for product and customer success and general customer happiness, right? You see that sixth stage there, right in the middle, the excite stage. It also ensures that you have advocates, right? People who are really happy about what they're doing. So it doesn't just align interests across departments within your company. It also aligns your interests and your company's interests with your customers' interests. And again, it does establish that shared vocabulary, having a single sheet that literally gets everybody on the same page. So if you have not yet built a customer journey for your business, this is kind of generally what you wind up filling in. This is something I would heavily encourage you to do. You cannot check off the document journey part of the Growth Triad if you haven't completed a customer value journey. Or there's other frameworks out there for customer journeys. Feel free to Google customer journey. You'll see others. We happen to think ours is the best and the most complete and the most helpful. But I'll also admit that we're biased. The point is, you got to get in there and you need to say, this is how prospects become aware of us. This is how we begin to engage. This is how we turn, visitors into subscribers. This is how we get that initial conversion, that first sale, that micro commitment. This is what we do that gets them excited, gets them that aha moment. And then once we have them as an actual customer, this is how we ascend them, right? This is how we have those profit maximizers that are in there. And then this is what an advocate looks like. It's how we get testimonials. And then ultimately, this is how we turn our customers into our marketing partners. So this is important, all right? This is very, very, very important. And I'll just say, if you're a lab member, we have an execution plan just waiting for you inside of the execution plan library. I've got a link there, but it's probably easiest just to navigate into Digital Marketer Lab and go to the execution plan area. And I believe it's usually somewhere near the top, okay? So if nothing else, if the only thing that you get from this is to go through this particular execution plan and to map out your value journey, I can assure you that this will be time well spent. Also, if you're on right now and you're not a lab member, so maybe you're one of our, you're at a different level, or you're invited here by a friend, or you just snuck in. Jenna, do we have a link to a free trial at least, or something like that from Lab?
Yeah, I'll just put it in the chat right here. And I think actually, Ryan, that the customer value journey EP is available right now to subscribers.
Okay, great. Yeah, so go and check it out. There's a good chance that you already have it. my purpose in doing this is not to try to sell you on, buying customer value journey. I recognize the vast majority of you who are on right now are already customers and you already have access to this. I just want you to consume it. All right. It's just so dang important. All right. So getting back to the, kind of the growth triad, we talked about having that documented journey. Hopefully, again, I've convinced you, if you haven't done so, get your customer value journey documented. Oh, here's a biggie before we move on. One customer value journey per avatar. Okay, it's a big question that we get. Do I need to do a customer value journey for kind of each product? Nope. Probably a lot of different products in your product line are going to be represented either through the ascend stage or the convert stage. But if, like digital marketer, if you have multiple avatars, so a digital marketer, we serve entrepreneurs and small business owners, folks who you kind of are the marketing department, especially if you're a solo, right? You're your own marketing department, you're your best marketer. I know that's where I was when I was first getting started. So that's definitely, an avatar. That's a segment of our audience that we serve. We also serve marketing agencies. So folks who are agency owners, that's another, group, another audience, another avatar that we serve. And then finally, we serve marketing professionals. So folks who, do marketing as a profession within organizations. Those are kind of the three avatars that we serve. So we would have three different customer value journeys for each one of those avatars. So a documented journey, it is avatar specific. It is customer segment specific. Hopefully that clarifies that. All right, so we talked about documented journey. Now let's dive in and talk about metrics, okay? And specifically, how do I produce actionable metrics? Not just vanity metrics, not just, oh, that's a pretty dashboard, but nobody ever looks at it, right? Actual metrics, because now that you have documented your customer journey, and hopefully, again, if you haven't done it, you promise that you will, you need to actually track it. And for years, we have tried to come up with what is the best type of scorecard, right? We try to come up with different scorecards and dashboards and all these things. And finally, we had the realization, what we need to do? We need to create a scorecard, right? We have the 8 stages of the customer value journey. You saw them before represented on there. We need a scorecard that basically allows us to track metrics based on each stage of the value journey. So you can see this is just a screenshot of our scorecard. So we've got the aware stage, the engage stage, the subscribe stage. I will say, I'm sure we're going to get some questions like, can I have access to this scorecard template? We may at some point make this available to lab members. We are still trying this particular template out, and we're a big fan of prove it before we dish it out. So this may at some point become available. Currently, it's really only available for use by our certified partner community. So I will say, if you are, if you're on right now and you are a certified partner, so I'm guessing I saw a little Michael King action earlier. Right, Michael's on. Is that right, Jenna?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Be shocked if you went. So Michael King, you get this. You should have access to this already. You should have already heard about this. We will at some point make this available. So again, this is not me trying to sell you on using our scorecard, but if you look at it, it's very, very simple. All we have here is we've broken it down based on each stage of the customer journey, right? And this is important. Most people, when they come up with a scorecard, they just try to come up with, well, what do we want to track? Well, we should probably know how many unique visitors we're getting. Well, how many leads are we getting? Well, how much of this are we getting? I don't know why it took us so long to come up with this, but if you're going to create a scorecard and you acknowledge that it's essential to document your customer journey, why not base your scorecard around the customer journey? So all we did is we created a simple Excel, or in this case, it was a Google Sheet document that has all the stages represented there. So you can see awareness, engage, the screenshot cut off, but you get the basic idea. And then we simply said, we want 3 KPIs, right? 3 key performance indicators, 3 metrics that we are going to track for each stage of the value journey. All right, 3 metrics that we're going to track for each stage of the value journey. And this is important because now we can go in and we can see, okay, this particular stage seems like it's doing fine. There's a lot of green. We're on target. So we don't need to focus on optimizing that stage. Because the important thing about, it's not just a matter of documenting your customer value journey. Once you documented the customer value journey, what you're then able to do is say, okay, which stage do I need to focus on and optimize? Well, this will tell you visually which stage you need to document and optimize. All you're doing is looking for, where's the red? If I see red, I know I need to I know I need to optimize that stage, and that's where the tools and tactics come in. We'll get to that. So again, this is our scorecard. The thing I want to emphasize, create this in Excel if you want to. If you're a programmer or you're familiar with dashboard software, build it out of some fancy pants dashboard software if you want to. My advice though, I would take the structure that we have here and I would simply just write it on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, okay? Go analog, keep it simple. We're keeping this ultra simple. And then maybe down the road, if you find that it works, then you can make it pretty, then you can make it ultra fancy. But if you've got a team and if you have an office, I would just, basically go in there and just like carve out some whiteboard space just for you and just draw this thing out. Okay, draw this thing out. You got the different sections, you've got 3 per, you're gonna track week by week. You can see there's a column for each week and then a remainder column because some months are going to have a couple of extra days in that. So I wanna have a complete month represented here. Then there's the actual, so how are we actually progressing? And then what's the targets? We're gonna decide at the start of the month where we expect each one of these metrics to land by the end of the month, and then red, yellow, and green. I'll show you how those work. So again, let's not get hung up on this exact scorecard. Let's show you how to build your own. So the first thing that you want to do, and let's assume that we're going to build the scorecard based on the different stages of the customer journey, because that's going to tell us where we need to focus, where we need to optimize. So step number 1 is to identify those categories. So what are going to be the categories, the groups? Some organizations like to track within departments. I'm going to highly recommend that you track within the different stages of the value journey. Now, when it comes to selecting those KPIs, right? So when you're going to actually select the KPIs, the 3 things that go within them, some things to keep in mind. Number 1, no vanity metrics. Okay, so we want to make sure that if we're tracking a metric, that it's actually something that's actionable, not just something that makes us feel good, right? So it could be that, the number of likes that you're getting to a particular social media post, maybe that's helpful, maybe it isn't, all right? But let's make sure that you can go, this isn't a vanity metric because based on how it's performing, this is the action that we'll take. Also, I recommend 3 per stage. Okay, 3 per stage max. There's gonna be sometimes you go, but we really need to track more. I'm not saying that you can't track more, but as it relates to reporting, right? Because we want everybody aligned to these. If you try to do more than 3 per stage, remember there's 8 stages, that's 24 total. If you get up to 5, this is going to get unmanageable and ridiculous very, very, very fast. Also, it should be trackable week over week. Okay, so no incredibly long-term metrics. One of the metrics we found that can be difficult to look at week over week is churn, right? So if you have a subscription type property, a subscription type service, churn is something that really it's difficult to experience week over week. You're gonna have really big spikes and it's not necessarily actionable. That's something you might look at month over month. Okay, so in this case, maybe instead of tracking churn, you're gonna just say, how many members did we lose in terms of units as opposed to percentage? That's another thing that you keep in mind. And then finally, the data must be easy to access and report. So make sure that when you select a KPI, that it's something that you actually can pull, that it's data that you actually can get. Now, we did come up with a list. Feel free to take a screenshot of this, and I'm guessing we'll make the slides available. If not, I'll make sure that you do get this. But we kind of brainstormed as a company, within each one of these stages, what are some metrics that are worth tracking? And so you can kind of see here some of the things that we came up with, some of the awareness stage, stuff like unique page views, total page views, organic sessions, how many, that last one, how many pages do you have ranked? On the convert stage, just looking at total purchases, right? How many new sales do we have? How many units sold? At the subscribe stage, how many leads were generated? What's the lead conversion rate? Maybe if you're heavy on the webinars, you want to bring in a webinar enrollment rate. So all these different, factors and elements might be ones that you would consider. Come up with your own. And again, it's 3 max. You may find that you only, it's really only important that you track 1 in the beginning. I would say if you're going to err on the side of having less, not more. Okay, so we selected our categories. We selected our KPIs. Step 2 is to do the thing that none of you are going to want to do, and that's to brainstorm your targets. Okay, so once we have our categories, we then need to go all the way over to the right-hand side, and we need to say, okay, by the end of the month, where would we expect this number to be? Okay, where would we expect this number to be? Now, a couple things to keep in mind. Number 1, guessing is good. all right? Guessing is good. Guessing is how we learn. If you think about the scientific method, it always starts with a hypothesis. That's a fancy scientific word for just taking a freaking guess, right? Now, it should be a semi-educated guess, right? So if you have a team, then I recommend getting everybody together, having them guess as individuals. So just say, okay, everybody, don't yell it out. Just write down, where do you think this should be by the end of the month? And then have everybody go around the room and see, did people generally agree? If people generally agreed, then great. If you see vast disagreement on where it should end up, have a discussion. Maybe you throw out the outliers and ultimately just take the average. If it's just you, if you're a marketing team of one, then take a guess. And I'm telling you, expect to be wrong. Okay, expect to be wrong for the first 4 to 8 weeks. The first couple of times that you do this, you are going to be wrong. That's okay. Some of the best learnings come from taking a guess, being wildly wrong, and then saying, okay, what assumptions did I make here that caused me to be this freaking off? What were some of those assumptions? Because that's where the big main learnings are going to come from. Okay, so please, please, please take the time to fill in these targets. You're not going to want to do it because you're scared of looking foolish, you're scared of being embarrassed, scared of looking dumb. Look, if you're a marketing team of one, nobody's going to know. I'm not going to tell anybody. I promise. If it's a larger marketing team, or if you have a marketing team, if you're heading either the marketing team or you're the owner of the company, or in some type of leadership role, please let everyone know, just like I did, guessing is good. Being wrong isn't just fine, it's fully expected that you will be wrong. All right, but we need to brainstorm these targets because that's where we're going to learn. That's where we're going to learn to begin to test some assumptions. All right, so we picked our categories, KPIs, we've selected the targets. Now what I want you to do is I want you to go in and I want you to fill it in for the previous period. So the way that we do this on ours is we have a tab at the bottom, and it's 1 month per tab. Okay, it's 1 month per tab. So if you're doing this in Excel or Google Sheets, I recommend you do the same thing, 1 month per tab. So just go back, create a tab for the previous month, and fill in the middle section as though you'd been tracking it all along. So we've got some targets, right? We've got our KPIs. Now go back and fill in the middle section and see, how'd you do, right? How did you do? And you're going to learn a couple of things. So again, I recommend that you have each month, or period on its own tab. Or again, if you're using a whiteboard, just fill it out, take a picture, print it out, store it digitally. Above all else, keep it simple. But what you're going to learn is, how accurate were your assumptions? Okay, if you go through this exercise, right? If you go through this exercise of creating the new one and of filling this out, so let's say right now, we're in August. If you go back and you fill this out for July, right, where you presumably have all the numbers, you're going to find out pretty quickly, how did we do in our targets? Okay, how accurate were the assumptions that we made? And if you find that you're way off, this is a good opportunity to potentially go in and adjust those targets. But the cool thing is, just by going through this exercise, you're going to learn tremendously without actually even moving forward and testing it. You're going to learn a lot about what you believe to be true, about what you know to be true. And that's one of the most important things in the world, by the way. That distinction between what do I believe to be true versus what do I know to be true. This is where you'll figure out how closely those things align. It's a key thing to having that predictable growth. You're also going to find out, can the data actually be pulled? I know when we first went through this exercise at Digital Marketer, we found that about, within any given stage, there was at least one KPI that we just didn't know how to get. We thought it'd be easier to pull. It either took a really long time to pull, or we had to, bring together multiple sources of data and compile them down to one, and there just wasn't a good way to get it. So you know what we did? We threw it out. There may come a day where we'll figure that out and add it back in. But if the data isn't easy to pull, if you can't just go in there and just pull it really, really, really quickly, throw it out for now. Far better to have less data and have less KPIs, but actually complete the scorecard and develop that habit, that cadence, than to find that, this is just too hard. This takes way too long. I don't want to do this. And so you just stop doing it. All right. In the beginning, let's do the things that are easy, even if it's just a single KPI per data point. Right now, we're per stage. Right now, we're just trying to develop the habit. We're just trying to flex some of these muscles. Down the road, the data will either get easier to pull. You'll find that it's valuable enough to, to figure out how to do that. Maybe you got to hire an outsourced person to pull it. Maybe you got to acquire some additional software to pull it. Or maybe you just say, you know what, I don't need that. We got all the data we need right here. But this is why you want to go back to step 3 and fill in that previous period. You will learn a ton. You will learn so much. Step 4, assign ownership. All right, the rule that I have for you here is if everyone is responsible, no one is responsible. One of the first rules they teach you if you go through any kind of emergency management training or safety training, never in an emergency situation yell out, someone call 911. If you yell out, someone call 911 or someone call a doctor, no one will call it because everyone will assume that someone is someone else. Okay? In an emergency situation, you are taught, point at a random person and say, you go call a doctor, you go call 911. It doesn't matter if it's arbitrary. By assigning it to one person, then it's actually going to get done. If they don't do it immediately, go, never mind, you go do it. Okay? And you point at somebody else. So the idea of everyone is responsible, no one is responsible. So at this point, once we created this, we got to ask ourselves, who owns the result for each KPI? So there's going to be some people on the marketing team, assuming you have a team, that are responsible for moving some areas and some people who are responsible for moving others. So for example, or not even within the marketing team, within the company as a whole. So for example, depending on your sales motion, the sales department may be responsible for ascension, or it could be the customer success department. The excite stage could be more on the product people than on the marketing team, or it could be a combination of both, right? So it all kind of depends on which team, if you have a multi-team organization, or which individual, or even if it's you. Again, even if it's you and you're a team of one, it's just good to acknowledge who is responsible and who can really move the needle on some of these different KPIs. Then you got to ask yourself, okay, in light of who's responsible for it, who should own the reporting of it? And I will tell you, ideally, the person who is responsible for moving a particular number should also not be the person who is responsible for reporting on that stage. And the reason is really, really, really simple. Okay, I'm not saying that you or your team would necessarily lie intentionally, but let's just say when it comes to reporting, it can be one of the easiest things in the world to lie with, intentionally, unintentionally, are numbers, right? It shouldn't be. Numbers should just be facts. But numbers, as we've seen with a number of accounting scandals, are fudgeable. So I highly recommend acknowledging who owns it and then saying, okay, so let's say who primarily owns the subscribe stage? That's Bob. Okay, so who not Bob should own the reporting on the subscribe stage? Now, if you have somebody in your team who's responsible for, data and analytics, then maybe it's one person who really does all of them, but I do recommend that you divvy up the responsibility and the task. And I recommend that you have people pull numbers for other folks within the organization. And just say at the outset, it's going to keep everybody honest. It's going to build accountability. Yeah, it's scary, but this is how we get better. And then lastly, who's responsible for ensuring the report is completed, even if a stage owner is unavailable? So there needs to be one person who is ultimately responsible for that thing getting filled in, even if somebody else doesn't do their job, either because they won't or because they can't. And in most cases, I point at the head of marketing and I say, head of marketing, this is your job, because ultimately you're the one who owns the entire journey. Again, if you're a team of one, guess what? That is you. But assign ownership. Who's got stage responsibility? Who has overall responsibility? The person with overall responsibility may also have some stage responsibility, or they may not, and they may just be there to fill in. But who has the stage responsibility? Ideally not the same person who owns the result, and who has overall responsibility. Once you know who's responsible for the stuff, now we get into step 5, which is where we actually measure. We actually begin measuring and reporting. So this is when you start filling in the actuals and when you start changing the colors. All right, let's talk about colors. I'm a huge fan of color coding because for me, they give me the opportunity to, at a glance, know whether or not it's good or bad. Because somebody on the digital marketer team, they could come to me and I could say, okay, how many unique visitors did we have last month? Or did we have last week? Oh, last week, we had 250,000. Okay, I have no idea. As I stand here today, I have no idea if that number would be good or bad or about right. I have no idea. But I know what green means. I know green means good. I know yellow means meh, and I know red means oh crap. Okay, so whether you, again, do this with colored markers or Sharpies or whatever, or if you go into Excel and you just have a drop down with the background like we did, here's what I recommend, how I recommend that you do it. Green means that you are on track or you are ahead of goal. This means everything is great, and you might even want to consider increasing the goal. So if I keep seeing a lot of green, I'm kind of wondering, are we sandbagging this? You know, do we need to bump up some of these goals? All right, so green is excellent. Green is we are on track or we are ahead. So the target that we set, we're either going to hit that target or we're going to be ahead of that target. Now, light green, that means we're a bit behind target, but we're okay. Now, this is important because being a bit behind target in the first week or two, not a challenge. You still got 2 weeks to catch up. As a leader, as a manager, if I see that we're behind target in the last week, I'm wondering, are you sure we're going to catch up? We don't have a whole lot of time to catch up. So that's when I might start to ask some questions. But in general, lime green, the KPIs show that we're behind, but we're okay, right? So maybe it's seasonal, maybe we got a bigger promotion towards the end of the month, but we have every reason to believe, if you put light green, that means you have every reason to believe that by the end of this month, it's going to be the dark green. All right, it's going to be that, the green that we want. It's going to be excellent. Yellow means that we're behind, but we believe that we will be green, within a week. So in other words, we're behind, but we got a plan to get back on track. All right, it means, yep, we're behind, but yet we got to do something different. We had to pivot a little bit, but we know what we're doing, and this is a biggie. No discussion needed. Okay, so if I see yellow, then I'm simply going to say, okay, so you're behind, but you know how to get back on track? Yep, behind. We're going to get back on track. Okay, you don't need to talk about it? Nope, don't need to talk about it. Sure you don't want to talk about it? Sure we don't need to talk about it. Okay, great. All right, so yellow is we're behind, but we have a plan. We're behind, we're pivoting, we have a plan, and we believe it'll get us back on track. Light red is we're behind, but we're not so far behind that we can't yet catch up. We're just not sure how to catch up yet. So yellow is we're behind, we aren't so far behind that we can't catch up, and we have a plan to catch up. The distinction between yellow and light red is with light red, or maybe you go with orange, in this case, it means we're behind a bit, we still have time to catch up, we just don't know how to do it. And so we need to figure out a new strategy. We need to leverage outside resources. We need to receive some additional support. Can we have a meeting on it? So I know for me, much of my time at these companies is spent dealing with metrics that are a light red. Okay, metrics, dealing with metrics that are a light red. Sometimes I'll get brought in on a yellow metric, but in general, these are the ones where I'm going to step in. These are the ones where I'm going to seek to help. These are the ones where I'm going to encourage the team to seek additional help. And then lastly and leastly, there's red, right? Red means we're behind. There's no hope of getting back on track. And we need to consider altering strategy, and we may even need to change our goal. All right, we're just off. Maybe you're off on a projection. Maybe you're off on where you thought the targets would be. But when it's red, the question that you need to be asking is, okay, what assumptions did we make that were way, way off? Because when it's red, remember, it's not just red like it's bad. It's like it's red, it's bad in comparison to the target that we set. So were we way off on our assumptions? Were we just wrong? Or are we dramatically underperforming? So we weren't off on our assumptions. Our assumptions were where they need to be. We're just not performing. So that's where you need to dive in. This is when it's fun / scary when I see red. So as you're doing the reporting, step 6, what we want to do is we want to change the colors. All right, now it goes without saying we want to turn, the reds into yellows and the yellows into greens, but I will tell you this, the biggest breakthroughs happen when you turn green into yellow. Now that may sound funny, like why do I want to turn green into a yellow? You don't turn green into a yellow by performing worse. You turn green into a yellow by increasing your targets, by raising the bar. So when you're able to say to your team, okay team, this has been green for a while, it's time to make this yellow. I'm going to raise the bar. I'm going to increase our targets. We're bumping up the targets 20%, and I want to see what is now yellow become green again. Let's do it. So now you have a mechanism for achieving growth. You have a mechanism and a visual reminder of what good to great looks like. So this is when the biggest breakthroughs are going to happen. I know we spent a lot of time there. I promise we're going to be doing more on scorecard creation and the metrics that matter. This is kind of a bit of a preview. We're going to be doing a lot more on this in Digital Marketer, so stay tuned to that. So we talked about documented journeys. We talked about actual metrics. Now what I really want to do is I want to get back around. I want to focus on tools and tactics, because if there is one area, I want to focus on the tools and the tactics. So if there's one area at Digital Marketer where I feel like we perhaps have done a disservice to our members, it's that we give you too much content. It's that we give you too many things to look at. And sometimes it can be hard. I mean, right now in the execution plan library, we're well over 30. We have 11 master classes and certifications. One of the biggest questions that we get at Digital Marketer from folks is, where do I start, right? Where do I start? I don't even know where to begin. And so one of the things that we are working on at Digital Marketer is providing you with a framework and a methodology for deciding and for figuring out, okay, this is the tool and this is the tactic that I need to dive in on. And what we want to do that is really to come back to the value journey, because we've known for a very, very, very long time that when it comes to optimizing the value journey, right, when it comes to figuring out how do we grow, because if you can optimize your customer creation engine, your customer factory, and that's what a value journey is, that's what it's documenting, right? It's documenting your customer factory. If you can optimize this, then you will grow. But what we know is, the rule that we have is that you need to optimize one stage at a time. Okay, you need to optimize one stage at a time. Well, now you have a mechanism for figuring out which stage should I focus on. Well, the stage you focus on is the stage where when you go and look at your scorecard, I see a lot of red. I see a lot of red. That's the stage that I need to focus on. Where we need to go next, and what we are working on, the product team right now is working on at Digital Marketer, is making it easier so that if you look at it and you identify the stage, we will then be able to identify which particular growth playbook, in other words, which execution plan you need to deploy to unblock that journey and to drive more growth. So this is something, as we are going through and we're really rebuilding and reconfiguring the Digital Marketer members area, I want you to know this is something that we are working on. But in the meantime, between now and then, what I want you to do when you're asking a question of where should I focus next? What execution plan should I go through next? Say, I know that I need to optimize the convert stage. I have a real bottleneck here. We're getting good traffic, we're getting good engagement, we're getting good subscribers, we're not getting a lot of converts, right? What are some execution plans that I can go through to optimize this stage, to unblock these bottlenecks? This is how growth happens, right? This is exactly how growth happens. And it can happen whether it's one of our execution plans. I know that you should be aware we also have these, we also have certifications on what we call the 8 critical core disciplines of digital marketing. So if you're a Lab Plus member, you also have access to these, right? So, and again, it should come down to which of these should I go through? I know we get asked that question all the time, right? There's the customer value optimization, sir, content, customer acquisition, email, social, search, analytics, optimization. We also have the direct response copywriting, the community management one, the e-commerce one, right? We got 11 of these things in here, plus over 30 execution plans, plus we're doing an office hours every single week. It's completely appropriate for you to wonder, where the heck should I start, right? So what I want us to begin doing as a community, as a group, is to say, you know what, I need help in this stage. Now where should I go? Because we can tell you, right? For example, if you need to drive more awareness, customer acquisition, search, direct response, copywriting, those are some certs that you should go through, right? If you want to drive more engagement, content marketing, social, community, the subscribe stage, the CVO cert, email marketing, obviously, the convert stage, direct response, copywriting, optimization and testing, customer value optimization. Obviously, Excite is going to come down to just actually having a good product and delivering a good experience. But assuming that happens, Ascension, we talk about that in CVO, and certainly analytics and data is going to tell you what people want to buy. And so we know that once people get to the Ascend stage, they then generally tend to progress to the advocate and the promoter stage more or less on their own. But just this chart right here, again, the only thing it speaks to are our certifications, right? So this is the type of dialogue and the engagement that I want to see occur in our engaged community. All right, let's begin speaking in terms of, I really need help optimizing this stage. Okay, what should I do? And the advice that you're going to get from your fellow lab members inside the engaged community, I think, is going to be far more helpful. The help that we can give you at Digital Marketer is going to be far more specific. And it's also going to inform, for us, where do we need to backfill from a product perspective? right? From an offering perspective, where do we need to have more office hours focused on? What execution plans do we need to roll out for you? What updates need to be made to different certifications and things like that? So let's just make a commitment now as a group to doing this and to establishing this as a culture. But don't forget the big rule that I said before, and that's to optimize one stage at a time. All right, one stage at a time. If this is the only thing you get from this time that we have together, it's this. Sticking to this rule will prevent you from succumbing to the debilitating disease, we've talked about it before, that we call shiny object syndrome, right? Shiny object syndrome, this thing where you're chasing around. Like I said, if there's one thing that we've done at Digital Marketer that's perhaps been a disservice, it's this, right? It's going out and maybe providing you with too much stuff, with too much content, with too much information. The other analogy that I used with this before, and our certified partners will be familiar with this one, called the half-built bridges analogy, right? So it's where this is you, and the thing that you want, that growth in your company, your proverbial pot of gold is on this mountain over here, right? And the whole reason that you join Digital Marketer, the whole reason that you go through these trainings is because you see them as a bridge to take you from where you are to where you want to be. And so, 1 week we're coming to you and we're saying, oh, here's this new Facebook ad strategy. And the next week it's, oh, you should try this Google pay-per-click strategy or this, video marketing strategy, right? And ultimately what you're left with is a bunch of what we call half-built bridges. And half-built bridges represent an enormous amount of work, an enormous amount of effort, an enormous amount of time, but no benefit. So my call to action to you, my kind of admonition to you, the Digital Marketer members, is to pick one bridge and finish it. Okay, identify, try right now, go through and say, I believe, even if it's a guess, I believe that this is the stage that I need to optimize. Now, what can I do to optimize this stage? What can I do this week, this day to optimize this stage? If you need help, ask us. We're here to help. We want to help. And once you finish that one, then finish another one, and then finish another one. And then ultimately, you've built enough bridges going across that you can take the cheesy walk and celebrate when you get to the other side. But make no mistake, when you're staring down over 30 execution plans alone, not to mention, the 11 masterclasses that we have, you're talking about probably in total between the execution plans, the masterclasses, if you're an elite member, the monthly or bi-monthly workshops that we do, or twice a month workshops that we do inside Elite, not to mention the office hours. I mean, you're staring down, probably close to 100 actually things that you could be doing, over 100 potential shiny objects. And so the action item that I have for you, the admonition that I have for you is please, please, please pick one bridge. Okay, pick one bridge to build. And hopefully, if nothing else, this framework that I've given you with the Growth Triad will give you a mechanism for doing that. We document the journey. We then begin to monitor and report on metrics based on that journey. Then we select the tools and the tactics based on which stages of the journey need to be optimized. We don't chase shiny objects. So the action items that I have for you, aside from picking the one bridge, watch or rewatch the customer value journey workshop and document your value journey. Please, please, please do that. It's so critical. It is so important. Action item number 2, build a scorecard and start tracking it weekly. Whether you do it in Excel, whether you get fancy, whether you just do it on a whiteboard, scribble it on a sheet of paper, it's not about making it pretty, it's about getting it done. But I gave you the stages for constructing your own scorecard. Please, I'm begging you to do that, because that's how you're going to select the tools and the tactics that you really need to go through to break through these different bottlenecks. It's how you're going to avoid shiny object syndrome. Now, as a marketer, it's simply a matter of going, where's the red? Okay, which tool or tactic within the digital marketer landscape, world, community do I need to access to turn that red into a yellow, to turn that yellow into a green? And then once you got a whole lot of green, you get to do the fun part, which is raise your targets, turn your greens into yellows, and then fight to get them back to green. And we're here to help you all along the way. So that's the Growth Triad. That's what I had to share with you. I really hope, again, I know this isn't the kind of tactical stuff that we're normally covering on office hours, but I just want to see y'all get some stuff done. I want to see you implement the right things, and I want to see you get some results. So hopefully that's helpful. And again, if you have any questions, just know we're in the community and we are here to help. And with that, I'll kind of shut up, stop talking, and turn it back over to you, Jenna, for any questions that we have.
Yeah, we have lots of questions. First, I want to say I feel like inspired myself to turn some green things back to yellow and get cracking. So a lot of the questions came in for the determining of KPIs and about the scorecard. So this question comes
Yeah, happy to
from
go back there.
this question came from Jared. Um, just looking at all the suggestions we have for KPIs, that slide, he says you have several ones to consider. How do you choose which ones? Oh no, that's from Richard. How do you choose which ones?
Yep. So what we did is there's the slide just so everybody has it. So as a team, and you know, Jenna, because I think you were here the day that we did this, we just kind of polled everybody at DM and we said, what are some things that we could track? And then we looked at it and we just said at random, hey, if you got to pick three, which three would you do? And I think we just kind of threw some darts and selected. We found that some of them, after we went back and and did it for a month, weren't as helpful as we thought that they would be. So we swapped them out with others. And so it really was as simple as that. If you have a team, what you could do is you could vote. So you could say, okay, everybody, I want you to pick three, and have them write down which three metrics they think would be the most helpful, and then go around the room and have everybody read off their three. And you could put tick marks next to the ones that everybody says, and then just make it democratic and say, okay, well, these three got the most tick marks, so we're going to go with those for now. And the ones that weren't in the top three but still got some tick marks, hey, if these don't work out, they'll be great alternates. But I'm pretty sure that the process of selecting the metrics, I think, took us maybe 20 or 30 minutes. So don't spend a ton of time here. Don't overthink it, because you're going to find out when you go back and you analyze that some of them just don't make any sense. So if you just spend a lot of time thinking about it, you're going to find that you wasted it when you run through that a future step of actually going back and filling it in for the previous month. You're going to find that it just wasn't that helpful.
That makes sense. Yeah, and one thing that Maria Piegler had mentioned watching is that to her, blog comments were a vanity metric. And I think, for us, so I don't think we have comments on our blog. And so, yeah, that would be something we don't measure. But for someone like a digital publisher, that might be a really good measurement of how their material is connecting,
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So, and that's why we didn't want to say these are the three, KPIs that you need to pick that are perfect, because they're going to vary from company to company. They're also going to change over time, right? And they might even change in a given season. So you might have as a critical engagement metric, you might want to say, blog comments, are they a vanity metric or not? Let's find out. Let's add them to the scorecard. Let's start tracking them, and let's see if we can influence them. So here's the biggie. What gets tracked gets optimized. What gets tracked gets influenced. If you want to watch certain metrics increase, track them across your entire company, and people will work to increase those metrics. Now, it's important if you find that those metrics don't actually affect the stuff that you want to affect, like i.e. sales and revenue and stuff like that. If you find that, like, wow, blog comments are through the roof, revenue exactly the same, and then nothing's really changing, then what you've learned, and this is incredibly important, is that is now a proven vanity metric, right? We've now proven that this is a vanity metric, because a vanity metric by definition is a metric that makes you feel good but doesn't affect an actual business outcome. So that would be frustrating. I mean, you could feel like you wasted some time, but that's a pretty great learning.
Yeah, I love that. Could you explain, this is from Jenna. Hey, Jenna, from another Jenna. Could you explain the North Star metric?
Yeah, so North Star metric is a more of a concept in SaaS. So we built this because we do own, also in addition to Digital Marketer, we own some other software companies too, like True Conversion and Praxio. So we were trying to create a more comprehensive, again, what you see here was literally just a brainstorm list, a brain dump. Some of this stuff probably doesn't make any sense. You were seeing the actual thing that we created. But a North Star metric is kind of the one definitive metric that would show that the customer has received value from it, or they have gotten to the aha moment. So a famous North Star metric was Facebook found in the early days that if somebody followed or if somebody friended 10 people, that that was their North Star metric. So a new user friending 10 people. So their North Star metric is what percent of new users have friended 10 people or more in the first 30 days. So that percentage was the North Star metric. And so it's kind of that internal metric that that you would come up with. I know for us at Digital Marketer, the problem is it's difficult to track, right? So for us at Digital Marketer, we know that that lab members have experienced the benefit of being a lab member when they go into the community and they ask a question, they get an answer. So that's why part of the reason we encourage y'all to use the hashtag I'm new here. One, we want to see where our new folks are, and when we see that hashtag, we're looking for that because we want to make sure that we can jump in and be as helpful as possible, but it also gives us a way to track it. So for us, maybe the North Star metric could be, how many times did the phrase hashtag I'm new here show up, inside of Engage in a particular week, right? And if we can influence that and get that to go up, then does that impact the number? For Twitter, the North Star metric was somebody following 30 people. So the North Star metric, again, you can Google it. Maybe we could do another office hours on it. But the North Star metric is something that's very common, very well known in software, especially consumer software. It may not be relevant to you.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. And I love the idea for an office hours about it. This one is from Jared. Why not fill in, okay. A little context. So in this one, you were talking about how you had everyone guess what the targets should be. And then you went and filled out, once you chose what the targets would be, then you filled out the previous period's targets. So Jared wants to know why not the other way around, where you fill in the previous period information before guessing to let that inform the next period's targets.
Yeah. So basically, and here I'll go ahead and just so that everybody can kind of see. There we go. So you can see my slide deck, okay? Okay, cool. So basically, what Jared is saying is right now you have step 2 is brainstorm targets, and then step 3 fill in the previous period. Why not have fill in the previous period be step 2 and then brainstorm targets be step 3? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So here's why. If you do that, you don't learn anything. If you do that, you'll go through the previous period and you'll go, okay, well, based on the previous period, this is what our target should be. And you'll just assume, I guess that's what our target should be. If, on the other hand, you brainstorm them first, if you brainstorm your targets first, and then you go back and you fill in for the previous period, what you will find out is how accurate were we? And maybe you find out and you go, yep, you know what? We nailed it. We were dead on with that target. Great. Cool. Maybe what you look and you go, whoa, we were way under, whoa, we were way over. That's when you want to have a discussion as a team, or even with yourself if you're a team of one, and go, quite literally, what were we thinking? What assumptions were we making? And it's amazing, especially if you do this as a group. It's like, oh my God, I thought that it was this, and I thought that this thing was true. And it's like, no, that's not true at all. And it can completely inform, holy crap, we were way off on a lot of stuff, for better or worse. I mean, I know there have been times when we assumed our trial rollover rate was like 80%. And we looked at it, we're like, that's not 80%, it's like 55%. This changes everything, right? And we don't even know why. And then the reason it's like, well, I thought at some point we measured it and it was 80%. And like, well, who measured that? Do you know? No, I don't know. Like, just the amount of stuff that people just decide is true because somebody else said it was true, and how this can become tribal knowledge within a company is astounding. So it gives you an opportunity to test your expectations. Also, sometimes what you do is you look at your target, and if you find it's off, you might want to go back another month, but you feel good about it. You're like, God, what was wrong last month? Because I still feel really good about this target. Maybe you then go back a previous month for just that one metric, and you go, whoa, something was way off last month, because yeah, the month prior to that, it was much closer. And you can learn a ton of things from that too. Write this down, please. No guessing, no learning. No guessing, no learning. If you don't guess, you do not learn. And the only reason you would not guess is ego. I just don't want to be wrong. And I will tell you, if you put ego ahead of learning, you will always be stupid. But I guess, nobody will know it. So, and I know that Jared's not saying that. It was a perfect, I didn't mean to invalidate your question with my snarky response. Jared, I appreciate you bringing it up, but please be willing to be wrong. Be willing to look stupid. That's where learning comes from.
Yeah, I like it. I'm stupid all the time, and Ryan can attest to that. Those are all.
I made a career off of being stupid.
Yeah. So. Those are all the questions we have. Before I kind of get into Lab Plus and stuff, do you have anything you want to add, Ryan? Little pep talk before we hop off?
No, just final admonition on this with the scorecard. Please don't get hung up on trying to pick the perfect metrics the first time. They won't be perfect. If you do this consistently for 8 weeks, I guarantee you at the end of 8 weeks, you will have a fundamentally different scorecard. You may not even have a single metric that is still there than what you started with, and that's okay. The amount that you learn during that time will be astounding, and you'll wind up in a really good place. So don't try to be perfect from the get-go. Don't overthink the metrics. Pick them, move forward, change them, chisel nothing in stone, and just remember, before you pick the metrics, document your customer value journey, because that's where you got to get clear on. Another thing that will inform these metrics is informing the value journey itself. How does awareness happen? Are we more ad centric? Are we more search centric? Like, just that question is going to inform the metrics that matter. So make sure that you do the value journey first, then the metrics, then the tools. That's the sequence.
Awesome. Cool. Well, for those of you that are interested in either, testing it out yourself, testing out this scorecard, testing out this process, this recording is going to be available inside your lab members dashboard. And I highly, highly encourage, actually, Ryan, would you send over your slides so I can make sure those are in the recording?
Yeah, I will absolutely send you my slides.
Thank you. So yeah, I'd highly encourage you going through it again and just kind of really thinking about those half-built bridges you got, finishing them up, wrapping things up. And for those of you who are not currently members, or you found this helpful, yeah, we do this every single week, and everything's inside of our Lab Plus membership. Let me change screens real quick and show you guys that we do have a free trial right now for Lab Plus. And I put that link inside the chat box. So if you go to digitalmarketer.com/LP/Lab Plus trial, you can try it today and try all those certifications that we had listed, and get your scorecard done, check out the recording of this, and then go through and get some of that training done so that you guys can build those bridges for free. And then we also have all our execution plans, every single recording from every office hours we've ever done. There are literally almost 500 by now. And yeah, we'd love to see you inside the community as well, asking questions and getting that help. So for all of you that are part of Lab Plus, I'll see you next week, same time, same place. And I hope you have an awesome week. Goodbye.
Bye all, thanks.
Is I keep a clear list of projects, and this is